78 to 79, okay? And then, and starting the environment leadership program, greening of Xerox Corporation and corporate America. So those are some of the off the thing, starting companies and mentoring entrepreneurs. At the same time, mentoring social entrepreneurs, and then young kids to come up to see what the future can be like and to make that future happen. So we will talk about the internet, which was the future. We didn't know how it was going to happen when we did it. So I got involved in 68, 69.
Wow.
And I was in the first meeting even before any network was started, when they were planning it at the Pentagon.
Wow.
And then Windsurf and Steve Crocker, they joined, they started at Lenny Kleinrock, okay, in UCLA, and JCR Licklider, who was before the ARPA IPT, he was there. And he's the one, and another Rob Stotts, who I was in a different group. So I went there for the start of the planning of the internet because I was interested in networking. I written a paper in 68, which was quite, 67, 68. So they invited me to come to this Pentagon meeting with Bold, Brannick, and Newman, who started the first packet switching backbone of the network, which is now called, it was called IMP, Interface Message Processor. Now they are the routers. These are the things that route information on the network. Then there are hosts, which are every PC that is connected is a host. But at that time, you have to imagine, put yourself back in the mid to late 60s. A mini computer was a big machine. Okay, a large computer was a huge machine occupying a whole air-conditioned floor, and it had less core memory than any of the PCs that are there. Like 6 megabyte was considered a huge internal memory. Okay, anything over 2 megabytes was a mainframe. Mini computers were something like 256 or 128 kilobit to about a megabit. Okay. Now you have to imagine how a network is developed with these constraints. The removable magnetic media was not there. What they had was magnetic tapes. So the information, if you have to transfer, you put on a tape, and it took many hours to take what takes you a few seconds to load on your pen drive. And they were, okay, so 256 megabyte was a huge magnetic tape. So you have to see the constraints, and then you will understand why the internet was developed as it was. Okay, it was not called internet, it was called ARPA network, not even DARPA. ARPA stands for Advanced Research Projects Agency. So I went to Department of Defense, and they were talking about how we're going to do it. The underpinning of this was the mainframe, how they justified to the US government that if a city was bombed, they didn't want the computer or network to be destroyed. They wanted to remain alive, like, like an earthworm, you cut it, new forms go and start forming and regrouping, okay, or information. So if you cut any node or any branch, things will reroute automatically. So the rest of the network will remain connected and working. So the decentralization was an absolute key principle. And the reason that's important is because it takes away central control. And that is how things progress much faster when you leave everybody to do the thing. But however, everything needs to be coordinated.
Yeah.
So once Bold, Brannick, and Newman brought this packet switching network, we had to connect what are called hosts. Okay. So first there were 3 hosts that you have to get anyway started. UCLA was there, and I think not Bold, Brannick, and Newman, there was 2 other hosts. Okay. And then MIT was host number 4 or 5. So I connected the MIT Multics, and my friend Bob Metcalf, who also was inventor of the Ethernet, he connected the PDP-10. So we had a little race. Okay. Who will get connected first?
It's like race to the moon we had with Russia.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Multics was a huge computer. Okay. PDP-10 was a smaller mainframe. And it was kind of, pretty much. So I got the Multics. and Metcalf got the PDP-10. So I had to develop hardware, design the hardware myself, as well as some of the software, okay, to make sure that the host connected to the other host, at least some message, but you can't understand what they were connecting, okay, at least with the message processor,
True.
okay, and then to the network. So I think we had, okay, so I think what we had was, and it was my first kind of experience. I had done some hardware debugging and thing, and these were little transistors and little integrated circuits just started to come. Now you're looking at it's end of '69, early 1970. So I'd look at the specs that were there. They were given in a sheet of like 20 sheets. From there, you have to take the specs, and the Multics had their own interface specs, how they expect signals, how they're giving signals. So you have to make something that would translate these signals and put it into a form that Multics would accept. It was a little bit challenging. I call it GIMP spiff, okay?
GIMP spiff, what is that?
Okay.
That's funny word.
There was a GE645, one of the most advanced hardware on which Multics was sitting. Multics was a software, okay, for multi-processing system, Multics, okay, multi-computing systems, okay. And GIMP spiff was GE. IIMP was an interface message processor that Bohl, Branach, and Newman had developed, a special processing interface. So GIMP spiff.
It sounds like my
and the huge logic was so huge. Then I used Carnot maps, which I learned at IIT Kanpur. Carnot maps. If you're an electrical engineer, you know what Carnot maps are. They enable you to take a huge logic thing and compress into the most simplest logic system that has the same thing as the huge logic. Okay. So that was manageable to put on a back of a panel, and I had to do the wiring. You know how these things were, sometimes they were soldered, sometimes they were little wire pins on which you wire wrap the wires, okay? That's how things were connected, okay? So I had to build it myself. I had to saw the back panel. I had to go machine something using a lathe, which is what we learned in workshop at IIT Kanpur. The workshop, remember,
I remember that.
in the first couple of years, you have a lathe, you need to operate it, you need a filing system. So I use all those things, the tools. So now the tools that we were taught, okay, I had to use them to build the first interface, okay? And lo and behold, there were few bugs, but by and large, once the hardware was built, debugging and testing, it took a couple of weeks, and it was running.
Wow.
Metcalf was working in parallel. So Metcalf got the hardware, I think, a few days later, but he got the software working first because PDP-10 was a simpler system.
Okay.
And I had Multics people who were, working with me, to put it there. But, Metcalf had, a smaller group because it's smaller processing. It was a lot of fun. So we called it a tie.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
People like me.
Okay. So coming back to the development.
Yeah.
So once the computers were connected, we had a meeting at UCLA with Lenny Kleinrock, Windsurf, Steve Crocker, few other people from different universities and research centers. And Bohl, Branach would come and say, okay, now we got this kind of working. Okay. We've got 5-6 computers connected. What are we going to do with it? Okay. We need to share information. We need the computers to understand each other. Now, some computers were 8-bit bytes in those computers. Some were 16-bit bytes. Some were 36-bit bytes. Some use hexadecimal. Some use different kind of coding schemes, 32-bit processors, 24-bit processors. Okay. Some were like 256 kilobit core memory. Others were like 6 or 8 megabyte was the biggest computer, and after the 6. So we sat down and we said, okay, we're going to have to develop some protocols, okay? And so how we transmit, Bohl, Branach, and Newman is a packet switching network, like routers. They route information. Once the information comes there, what do you do with your computer, okay? So we said, okay, we're going to have kind of a transmission control program. Okay, IP came later. So TCP, when you say TCP IP, TCP is Transmission Control Program / Internet Protocol. So TCP became Transmission Control Protocol, TCP Transmission Control Program, and IP was the Internet Protocol, which comes later. Because this was one network only. So I'll come to the Internet part later, okay? So once we got that going, okay, we said, okay, how are we going to do that? Okay, how do we acknowledge? How do we make sure that the packet that is sent there comes from a different thing, is assembled correctly? Okay, so so we have something called RFNM, RFNM, request for next message. Okay, so this, if you go down nobody deals with this thing because it's all in the trenches. Okay, so we said, okay, so once we got the transmission part working, so we could get a message from one host to another host. Now, the next thing is, how do we connect to the host? So we developed something called an Initial Connection Protocol, ICP. Not Internet Protocol, not TCP, not IP, but ICP, Initial Connection Protocol. So you could make a connection to it and they will assemble. Now, these two hosts could talk to each other, okay? So Initial Connection Protocol works. So we said, how do we do the application? So one of the common application was that if you had a computer and you were working from a terminal, now they had teletype terminals, they had little small display computer terminals that were tied to the network, okay, tied to the host computer, okay? Now, if you were sitting at the terminal, okay, wanted to use a host in LA, and you're sitting at the MIT computer, how do you connect to host at LA? So we call something called a telnet protocol, okay? That means it will allow you to uniformly connect to any computer on the network, okay, using Initial Connection Protocol, and then using the telnet protocol to communicate and use that computer like it was your own computer, like you were connected, your terminal was connected to that computer, okay? So that was the first application that we got working. Then I said, I was interested in applications. So I said, the TCP part is working fine. So I was involved in that working group, but I said, I want to start something that we can actually transmit files from one computer to another computer and also be able to use emails. Because those are the two principal applications that were there besides.
Around that time, Abhay?
What? Yeah, I'll tell you about email.
Right.
Email was there for a long time. I mean, Multics has his own email system, Bold-Beranek has his own email system, and UCL has his own email system, but within one host.
Got it.
Okay?
That's what I was about to understand. Okay.
Okay, it was only within one host. Like if I was an MIT Multics user, I could send another Multics user an email. Okay?
Was it called
you can call it message or email.
Something else? Was it called email at that time, or you used to call it something?
It was called email. It was called email. I mean, mail through electronic, okay?
Right.
So you could do some attachments, okay? In Multics, you could do, not everybody allowed an attachment. Some people only allowed simple messages. Some of the smaller computers were there on network, okay? So I said, I'm going to do something so we can, one host, and there were different files with different bits and bytes and things, and you want to make sure that the file you're sending is understandable to the other file. So I said there's a data transfer protocol, and then there's a file transfer protocol on top of it. So how the data is done, data is assembled, and then how the file is done. It was a file name, and you got to translate it from remote file name to a local file name. And then email was another thing, okay? So I said, okay, I'm going to start a working group for these two applications, okay? And so I said, we'll first focus on the data and files. So once we get that going, then the email would be the next step, okay? So I got quite a few people working with me, okay? Metcalf was there, Jim White was there from different universities and things. And I was the chairman of the file transfer protocol working group.
So
okay.
So my information is not accurate. You are the father of FTP.
Yeah. So, but I tell you, it's always a team. We work as a team. Okay. I was the chairman. I wrote the specs. I wrote the thing. But so many people contributed. They were smarter than me. They knew much more about computer software, and they knew much more about the operating system and the innards of how the file systems in the different computers are. So, and I was more of the arbitrator of what would work and taking some of the best ideas and putting them together.
So I have a question, Abhay, here.
Yeah.
How do you even come up with the idea of FTP? Like, why do you need to create FTP? That's because
okay. So simple thing. Okay, I get your question. The simple thing is that you have a computer here, computer here. What do computers have? Data, and how is data stored? In files. Okay, in your data in your computer. Anyway, they're files, information. Even if it's a text document, it's a file. Okay, it's file as a file, it's a document or anything. If you want to transmit the document from your system to another system, okay, which is completely different, okay, you have to have some kind of a standard or protocol of a middle way that is doing that both can understand and retranslate. One-to-one is easy. You know, you say, okay, you use mine, I use yours, I'll translate it and I'll translate to yours. But when it becomes 6 or 8 or 3, the combinations multiply. You can't do 1 to 10 different systems.
Sure.
Okay? So therefore, it's easier to have a standard and put it into a standard protocol, and how you exchange the files, how you name them, how you transmit them, and how they're assured that it's the same data arriving. Okay? And the other person is using from his computer and he says, hey, it's the same thing. The integrity, the accuracy, the security, all those things come in. Okay? So, and I was just kind of, listening to people, giving my ideas, and people will shoot it down. I says, fine, I'm not the expert, you tell me. But I say, hey, if you do this thing and that guy wants to do this thing, it won't work in the other system. So I was more, I would say, arbiter, trying to get people working together. Okay, same like when we had the Pan IIT, 6, 7 IITs, everybody has their own opinion. Hey, you got somebody to say, hey, we're going to do it this way. So you can't have a big ego. If you have big ego, only my idea. Same with Windsurf. Windsurf was the chairman, became the chairman of the overall network working group. Okay, and Windsurf has the same qualities. And he was very hard of hearing. I don't know if you know that.
No.
He's hearing impaired even then.
Oh, wow.
Okay, yeah. And he had hearing aid. And he was in his 20s. And he was married. And his kids, okay. He was the oldest of us there. I was in my mid-20s also. Okay, in 69, I was 25, 26. I had gotten married. My first kid was just born. So he and I connected also. There are a few others who were seniors, but not in the very early group. Okay, so anyway, coming back to it.
Phenomenal journey of it.
So in 1970, September, I connected the Multics. Okay, by October, it was working.
Wow.
Okay, and then in the fall, about November, December, I became the chairman of the file transfer working group, file transfer protocol group. Okay, and then in April of 71, I wrote the first version of FTP, published on the network so people could start using it, connecting it. It all became working pretty well because we had been practicing with it and trying to work with it before we published the specs. Because you got to debug the specs.
Right.
Okay, you can't just publish the spec and say, hey, everybody say, hey, it doesn't work, okay? So you want to make sure that the specs work.
So it's almost like open source in a way.
And now let me tell you the story about email, okay? As they were coming, I said, we need to put email with the FTP because we can't have too many processors. We don't want to have a separate email processor because, the computers are very small. I told you, there were 256 kilobit to 8 megabit core memory. Hey, come on. How much processors you can be running simultaneously? It's not like today's gigabyte core memory computers. Okay, 256 kilobyte compared to a gigabyte is not just 1,000 times smaller, it is 1,000,000 times smaller than 256 gigabytes, which you can get on a pen drive now. I have a pen drive with 256 gigabytes. I'm sure you have one too. Okay, so you got to put yourself back. Okay, so we said, okay, we're going to have one processor. So I said, okay, I'll put two commands, mail and mail file, MAIL and MLFL. Okay, these were, if you read the first thing, that those two commands are there. John Postel said, hey, we should do it together, who passed away many years ago. He was like the keeper of the specs for everybody, all the protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we published, the email was part of the FTP for many years, from 71 to I think 75, when SMTP was put as a separate protocol and taken away from FTP. And because by that time, the computer technology in 5 years, you know the Moore's law. Every 4 years or 5 years doubles, okay? So now the computers have doubled in capacity and in speed. So we could afford to have a separate mail server. And SMTP was a simple mail transport protocol. Okay, after IMAP comes much later.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, what happens now is that people now start using mail and mail file. Now we have a lot of different email addresses and things. So we needed to put, first we were just putting like your name @ space, okay, at a certain host. So it's like you are Sanjiv Goyal and your local name @ and your host name, say MIT Multics. So it'll say Abhay Bhushan, or my username there was, I think, AK Bhushan at MIT-Multics. So we had at the time, we had about a dozen or 18 or 20 hosts by early 71 connected. They were increasing, very regularly. And so at that time, Ray Tomlinson was part of our group. So we said we need to standardize mail headers, because everybody some has dot, period, some has @ some has this thing, that thing. So we said we need to standardize as what can go in your username, how it can be, and what can be like a host name standard. Otherwise, you can't have a host name like 50 characters. Somebody has said, my host name is this and that, and special characters. And so that's why you have all these internet things that you have to have dot and dash, and you can't have certain things in your name.
Domain name.
So at that time, Ray Tomlinson at Bold, Brannick and Newman, he was using the @ sign. They had 3 computers connected in Bold, Brannick, even before the internet email. He was using @ sign to separate his users from the 3 different host names. So we all looked and said, hey, Ray, that's a pretty neat thing, okay? Because it only requires one character, @ sign, doesn't require a space, @ space, and a host name.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, hey, why don't we just mix it and use @ sign? So I said, I was the chairman, and I said, that's a fantastic idea. Ray, you're a genius. We should do it. It'll save processing time. At the same time, I think it looks well. One character @ sign. Now somebody complained that, in my teletypewriter is a kill character. Means it kills, it's a null character. @ is a null character. And in a teletype, it kills, it makes the teletype go dead.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay. So I said, hey, how many teletypes are on the network? You know what a teletypewriter is? It was a remote typewriter terminal connected to a host. So they said, well, maybe few, but I have one. So I said, hey, how are you connected? He said, to a computer. I said, your host computer can substitute this @ sign to whatever character you want. So he said, yeah, I think we can do that. So that's how we got the @ sign in.
Wow.
Well, it's not my invention.
What a story. What a story.
Yeah. And so, so we started kind of working and thing. And then I was kind of, we were meeting in every place. So University of Colorado, okay, we were meeting in UCLA, we were meeting in Stanford, SRI, we were meeting in Berkeley, we were meeting in, I went to Urbana-Champaign, there's the University of Illinois, they were part of the network. We met in Washington, D.C., we met in New Jersey, we met in many different cities, meetings, network working group. In Boston, of course, rather Cambridge, where MIT and other Bold, Brannick and Newman, other people were. And so it was a fun time.
I
And
can't.
then I joined Xerox Corporation, because then, Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, they were in the forefront of technology.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
So you must be
So
hanging
go
out
ahead.
with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates too at that time. They were just kids.
I mean, this is Steve Jobs, the Apple computer, Microsoft, they started much later.
Right.
I mean, even the company started much later.
True.
It was a little PC, like an Apple, that Steve Jobs had come in. And then Bill Gates started this program, with a little thing, and they call the DOS and things, disk operating system, and with Microsoft. He left, Harvard, to start that. But I didn't meet Bill Gates until the Pan IIT 2003 conference that we had him as the keynote speaker.
Yeah. Well, you have, built, I will say, is for most of the Indians who may not know you, they have no idea that people like you, and especially you, have paved the path for all of us to thrive. Actually,
Okay.
The work you have done in the 70s and 80s has changed our future.
Right. But let me tell you, people at that time, we were discussing, Vint, myself, other people, hey, how are we going to use the network? The largest imagination we had was going to be used like all the world's information, like what Google does. Books and things will be on the network, accessible to everybody, like at libraries of the future.
Wow.
Okay. So we had that. Okay.
And
so storage, I said, storage will be cheap. We're extrapolating the Moore's law even before. In the Moore said, this is what is happening, because we could see it happening.
Yeah.
And but we did not have any idea of the commercialism. We all came from the university kind of environment and thing, and the browser had to be born to start seeing the commercial applications.
True.
And so now internet is used so much for commerce. Like Amazon.
Yeah.
The world's buying and selling and marketplaces and things, commerce is handled on the internet. So we had a pretty good idea of the information, that people will store information, will organize it, will run programs and process information, and that kind of a thing. And we had no idea it will become so big. So I'll now come to the internet protocol part of it. So I joined Xerox, okay? And Xerox was doing the Ethernet that Metcalfe invented in 1980, 79, 80. And by this time, a number of networks had come through local area networks, as well as 2 or 3 different packet radio networks, that the guy who started Qualcomm, okay, he was part of the group.
Jacob.
Yeah, Jacobs, Arvind Jacobs. So I remember him. He was much younger then, in the 70s. Okay, so I met him recently.
At that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him years ago.
Yeah, but Qualcomm was not started at that time. It was involved in packet radio and things like that. So Arvind Jacobs.
What is his biggest regret?
What?
He put 2 M's in Qualcomm. He said, I should have put just COM, not 2 M's. Jokingly, of course. He and I met at what is called, I think it was called the 35th anniversary of the internet. Nice.
We had a computer history museum, a program. So
phenomenal guy.
Okay, so what had happened is that around in the mid 70s or late 70s, they connected different networks together. So they say, hey, we need a protocol for internet connection. So that's why IP was formed, Internet Protocol. How do you connect diverse networks to each other? Okay.
Wow.
So that's that part of it. And I was working at Xerox. Xerox, I was involved with being the manager of the system integration standards and architecture for Xerox network systems. Now, at that time, there was a race between Xerox network systems and the internet. TCP/IP was coming separately. And everybody was using the White House, Microsoft, all the major, they were using XNS. We had the Star Workstation in 1980 before a Macintosh. Now, Steve Jobs looked at it and he got some of the Xerox people working on the Macintosh, which I think was announced in 81 or 84, I think, somewhere there.
Yeah, I believe so.
Star was announced in 81. Star was announced in 81, and Macintosh came in 84.
Wow.
But we had all these network systems with remote directories, multiple mail systems, file system, printing system, all integrated with all the protocols and everything. But Xerox did a very bad thing. I would say very, not bad. I mean, they had this thing that this is our standard, our thing, we can't make it public.
Short-sightedness.
Now, Chuck Geschke and John Warnock, you know who they are. They're the founders of Adobe Systems.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so they were working at Palo Alto Research Center on something called Interpress. Interpress was a language. So they said, hey, you should make it public. Okay, Metcalf came and said, why don't you make XNS and all the thing public? Because Apple is asking for it. This was back in 1983, 84. To run their Macintosh network. So Apple talk, they want to use XNS. But they just don't want they want the full standards. So they can have the file system standards, the mail system standards, the printing system standards. They want to use the whole thing. Okay. Now in 80, I think it must have been, let me see, I think 81 or somewhere, or maybe 83, 84 when Adobe was started. Geschke, I think must have been, I'm just thinking, it's probably in 81. 81. Geschke and Warnock were there in Stamford, Connecticut, with our VP and the senior vice president of Xerox, and he just refused to let us open the network.
The stack.
Okay, so Geschke and Warnock, they left and they started Adobe. They formed something called PostScript. Okay, which is not as good as Interpress.
Yeah.
But Warnock was the main author of Interpress. But Xerox said, you can't use it. Xerox tried to have legal things. And they said, no, we have started with the node before Interpress. This is what I did. This is a different path for it. Okay. And then Metcalf left to start 3Com Corporation.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
to make Ethernet routers and Ethernet things. So people were kind of still leaving. And Geschke and Warnock, Geschke said, why don't you work for Adobe with us? Okay. And I said, at that particular time, I was said, I think I'm going to do a Xerox because Xerox was more secure and safe. I didn't have the concept how big Adobe will become.
Yeah.
Okay. But even otherwise, it was perfectly kind of, I was there. So my kind of thing to people who are listening here is follow your passions. There are opportunities everywhere. See what is of interest to you. Grab it and go with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is the energy that gives you to execute what you want to do. Now, this is an interesting story with it. I was in the PhD program at MIT. Okay, so I'd done all my things, qualifying exams, everything else. I was all set. Only thing that was required was the thesis. So I put my thesis proposal, the forerunner, and this is back in 1970. Okay, forerunner of what is now, you would even say HTML type thing, that we could use different information and use it together in some kind of a thing, but I didn't have computer linguistic background. Okay, so they rejected my thesis proposal.
Oh.
And I got a hot under the collar. I said, what's the thing? He said, this is an engineering project. What you're trying to do is build something. It doesn't have the theoretical underpinning of what you're raising, would be called a PhD topic. Internet network doesn't qualify for that. But they had no concept. They're only working in the computer linguistics models. Okay. And so my old professor, Bill Schreiber, who had actually introduced the first TV system back in 1965 at IIT Kanpur in India.
Oh, wow.
And they were making TV programs. There was no city in India had TV. Only IIT Kanpur had it. And so government of India complained. They say, hey, you're doing illegal broadcasting. So he put a cable to run those monitors. So we had cable TV at IIT Kanpur.
Wow.
And our first convocation in 65 was broadcasted on cable TV. So Bill Schreiber came to me because he was my master's thesis professor on picture processing. So Bill said, hey, these guys don't know much. Why don't you come and finish your PhD under me again? Because you've done so much on picture processing, which is efficient transmission and coding of color pictures.
Yeah.
This is what you do when you take a picture and you can see how you can code it so you can take the fewest amount of bits to transmit it. Just like what you use here today on the movies that you screen. They're not the big, huge movies. They are efficiently coded to go through the network and you can stream them.
Yeah. Amazing encoding.
Okay. So he said, why don't you work on this thing? Because the master's thesis topic was efficient transmission and coding of color pictures. Okay. So I went there and, I was there for 1 month. I couldn't stand it. It was not my passion. I said, my passion is on the computer network. And then Licklider came to me and says, why don't you work full time over here? I'll give you a job working with the thing. And I had 2 kids by January 71. Okay. And I said, okay, he gave me a good salary offer, good thing. Okay. I tell Bill, PhD, what's the thing? I'm going to do building. I'm going to do things. I don't want to be an academic university professor. Okay. He said, what's wrong with university professor? I said, no, they're very good. I totally value Vic Ryder is a professor. Okay. But that's not my passion.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Though I find joy in teaching, but I found joy in building. Of course, you can do the genius is in the end. That means you can be a university professor. You can start companies. Bill said, I have started companies. He started actually 2 companies, ECRM and thing. So I said, yeah, but Bill, I want to work on the network. It's not about building. I think you can build companies. You can do anything. But I want to work on this computer network. I love what is happening there. Okay. So I want to be there. So he said, okay, I still advise you get your PhD. Because, PhDs have the respect for PhDs. They want to make their people more PhDs in their own line.
Of course.
But I said, okay, but I said, I'll get an MBA. Okay. So in 71, okay, I got an MBA at Sloan School.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. So I said, hey, that's just as well. Because I had done most of the courses and things. I said, this is no big deal.
Abhay, that must be an amazing journey, and I can talk to you for hours and hours.
Hey, at that time I was father of 2 kids, and my wife was not working. Okay, so I had to support a family, so that also went into the equation. Otherwise, I was on a student, research assistantship. But how I would support the family, like in 70 and before I took the full-time job, I would just work in the summer.
Yeah, or jobs and other
things. A consulting assignment. Okay, or write for the local rag magazines. And they would pay me pretty well.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal, Abhay. Your journey is very inspiring for a lot of people.
But again, what I said, follow the passion. In 1970, when I joined Xerox, in 78, before my grandfather, my mother's father passed away in 1976. Before my father's father passed away in 1969. Okay, they both, since I'm the oldest grandson, my sister is 1 year older than me, and for both of them, they had a big plan. They said, you must do something for India. And before they passed away, I got married to an American in 1968. My grandfather first opposed it, but then my brother-in-law, my sister married an Australian. She was at Stanford. She was one of the first women PhDs in electrical engineering at Stanford.
Wow.
Manjula Bhushan Waldron.
Wow.
Okay. So my brother-in-law, Ken, who is a big professor of robotics and mechanical engineering, and now, of course, professor emeritus at Stanford. Okay. And also at Ohio State, was the head of the department, and very well, they made a Ken Waldron Day at Ohio State. So he wrote a letter to my grandfather, say, this is off the cuff, okay? Interesting story, but I can tell you sometime later. All right.
No.
Coming back to, the thing is that both my grandparents wanted me to do something for India. So they had made me promise that I will spend some time serving the poor. Because my Babaji, my father's grandfather on father's side, he went to jail fighting for Gandhi, opposing. My grandmother went to jail, my Dadiji.
Wow.
For fighting for independence of India. So I was filled with this verve of wanting to do something for the poor people. My maternal grandfather, he donated everything he had. He was a civil engineer, and he was a Rai Bahadur Khitab they gave him. But he gave everything away, and he did his Ambar Charka. He became a follower of Gandhi and Vinoba Bhave. And we had a big Ambar Charka in his thing. He says, our duty is to make sure the rest of us are equally well off as us. So I'm going to wear very simple thing, which only the common man can afford. So this is the ideas that I was brought up in. So they made me kind of, not promise and his promise, but they said, will you work for poor people? I said, absolutely, I'll come, So as I went back, I tried to actually find a job in India in 71, 74, before I joined Xerox in 74, after I graduated. And they all told me, you were in computers, they had never heard of computer networks. Few people had heard for computers. They said, oh, you can join IBM selling computers. So I said, अरे पढ़ो फारसी बेचो तेल देखो किस्मत का खेल.
That's so
okay
fun.
Yeah, you can read Farsi, but if you're selling oil, see what happens. So I mean, Wipro was done by an oil salesperson, that.
Yep.
Asim Premji. So पढ़ो फारसी बेचो तेल फिर बनाओ कंप्यूटर के खेल. So that happens with Wipro.
He did it. I mean, they did it phenomenally well.
That's right. Azim Premji, I met a number of times, but he's a wonderful person. Totally dedicated to education, dedicated to building a better India. So then I said, I'm going to devote 1 year of my lifetime, at least working for the poor in India. So I took a leave from Xerox Corporation. And in 78 to 79, I went back to the villages in India to see how the poor people really working, started an integrated village development program. And that was, I think, the best year of my life. And the reason I say it was the best year of my life is because I learned so much. Every day I was helping hundreds of people. We started a hospital there. We started this appropriate technology, bio-intensive farming. Okay, the biggest complication, there was not a single water seal latrine. In fact, there were hardly any latrines. Even the old style latrines, they were maybe just a few. Okay, people used to just go out in the woods.
Wow.
Okay, and there were no woods. I mean, the woods were being systematic, and so it was very, very difficult. So I said, we're going to have sanitary latrines installed in the village, paid by the people, and they were all willing to do it. So, and we manufactured those things in the village itself. The toilet seats and everything. I mean, they're squat toilets. So with the with concrete and things, and shine them up so they're smooth, and at the same time the PRAI type tanks that you could change, and it made a good slurry which could be used as fertilizer. So this is not high tech, not computers. It's very low tech, but it's providing jobs. And in 70, when I was leaving, 79 January, WGBH from US, okay, NOVA program. On the TV here, they have a program called NOVA program. Have you seen NOVA program sometimes?
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, PBS. So in 79, they came there and they wanted to do a series on appropriate technology and how technology at a village scale was transforming India. Mm-hmm. So they came and they spent about 2-3 days. They filmed me, and they made a series called India Machinery of Hope, and was shown 1 hour program on nationwide TV, okay, in the US in 79 November. Wow. And about 10-15 minutes of that was focused on what the work I was doing.
So this is, Abhay, if I'm not mistaken, is just like Shah Rukh Khan's movie Swadesh. Is it inspired by your story?
I don't know. But, the question is, so this particular thing, I think have somewhere a old video of the recording. from that India Machinery of Hope program. But it was kind of, so when I came back, Sam Pitroda saw that program. And I was working at Xerox and also in the strategic group. So we were trying to buy Sam's company, Westcom Technology. Westcom Digital, I think, Westcom Digital. We didn't buy it. Xerox did not buy it, okay? But I met Sam. So Sam said, I know you, I met you. So I said, Sam, I've never met you. You're in Chicago, okay? But he said, but you're so familiar. So we started talking. I said, I just came back by spending a year in it. Now I know. I saw you on the NOVA program. I said, yes, you did see me on the NOVA program. So that's my wife. And then we became a good friend, and I visited him in India when Rajiv Gandhi had called him to start C-Dot communications and things. And so Sam was fantastic. And I've met him many, many times since. He's kind of a good friend. So this is how you're going to meet people at different things.
Yeah. No, it's phenomenal.
So again, I come back to the same thing. Follow your passions. One of the passions I had was serving the poor, spending time with them. So I took the time to follow my passions. After I came back, the whole Xerox, when they were getting out of all the workstation business, they gave it to Sun. They gave the networking business, almost handed it over to Cisco. Okay, and they were just getting out of the whole computer networking, XNS, all the business. So at that point, I had a choice, what do I do? And so Geschke, that's the time Geschke approached me and said, why don't you work for Adobe? He knew that Xerox was getting out, and he and I were good friends. So I thought about it, and I said, I got involved with Earth Day 1990 in Palo Alto. We were at the headquarters for Earth Day 1990 in 89 December. And at the same time, I was working with them. And I got passionate about environment and greening of corporate America. So I said, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Yeah, okay. So I kind of, said, I need to green Xerox Corporation. So I started inquiring within Xerox, calling people and saying, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I got an environment, health and safety group, other groups, and I wrote a 20-page paper called Greening of Xerox. Send it to the CEO. Say, hey, I'm going to call, I want you to approve this program. I'm coming out of nowhere. I'm here on the West Coast working on the computers and sending him saying. And I said, it's going to save you $100 million a year. Okay. So he said, okay, even if you save me $1 million a year, why don't you do it? I'm interested. But work in the environment, health, and safety group. I said, okay. So I started a program called Xerox, but I don't want to call it Greening of Xerox. I want to call it Environmental Leadership. I said, I have no problem with the name. Greening, I just put the Greening of Xerox, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
So I said, he said, what do you need? I said, I need a budget of $300,000 and my salary. Okay, so he said, done. Okay, and I think we saved, over the period, we saved $400-500 million a year.
Wow.
And again, I'm not an environmental kind of engineering person, but you work with the people, you have a passion, you energize the people. So my contribution was to create an environment where every Xerox employee and group will look at something and say, what can I do to make it better? That may save Xerox money. It will require some initial investment, that's fine. It has to have some payback. Will help the environment and make life better and make Xerox Corporation also look better to everyone else. So, just like go get on a soapbox and motivate people. And, I had some knowledge. It's not that I was totally dumb in it. I had studied a lot and worked on my own time, getting up on it, and then went on a soapbox trying to make other corporations, okay, become more green. So I told the McDonald's guy who was there, okay, one of the senior VP, hey, and I told the Kodak guy, I said, you have all these photo films and everything. I tell you, you'll be driven off by electronics. He said, what are you talking about? There's no resolution there. I said, you just wait and see. You got to imagine the future. So Kodak's guy said, No, 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 no. Our photographic film is going to be king. This is kind of some small little things, electronic thing will do. They never have that resolution. You know, like little, it's like for playing. Like Associated Press sends a photograph remotely. It's for all that kind of thing. Little did they know that they're going to lose. There was a guy from McDonald's. I said, you know, you could sell all these hamburgers and everything. But I tell you, in time, you should look at vegetarian substitute veggie burgers. Because they're going to come. So you should start planning on it. He said, no, no. We are McDonald's. We are beef. There were commercials going on. Show me the beef. Who has more beef? Whether Burger King or McDonald's. Or this. I say, no, beef and thing. The real beef is looking at the future and creating the future. But it made some inroad, maybe didn't convince them. So I was in a soapbox lecturing for environmental. We started an organization called Bay Area Action in 1990, co-founded it. And it now is called Actera. It joined with another program as part of Peninsula Conservation Center Foundation. And so that got started. It's still continuing Actera. So the environment became a real passion. In '84, when I moved here, this is before even 1990, I was one of the first people to involve solar water heater on my roof. Okay? I'm one of the first people to involve solar panels. Now, of course, I have a second solar panel, which is 4 times more efficient at half the cost. But I got the first Prius hybrid, and I got a Volt. Okay? The idea is, and I started bicycling when I moved here. So that's what put me ideas of having the environment. And people used to make fun of me. One guy told me, you bicycle, you know, it's very terrible. I said, why? You're making the economy go down.
Okay.
Okay. I said, oh, yeah, because, you know, I bicycle, I'll be healthy. And I won't need so many medical procedures. And that doesn't mean the economy will go down, but I'll be healthy. He said, would you rather be sick and get cancer and spend $1 million on your cancer treatment? Economy will go up. But we're not looking at the welfare. GDP is a false god. I used to call GDP as gross national waste. Because the more you waste, the more GDP goes up.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, we should look at well-being of people.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's an area I started more focusing on. Okay, with my environment leadership. Then I left Xerox, and somebody kind of challenged me that hey, this is nothing what you're doing. You should create a company. You can't create a company. So I said, okay. I joined one of my friends, Raj Mohindra. He was coming here to start a company called in semiconductor equipment and things. And so I became co-founder of Yield Up. Okay, and we took the company public in 2.5 years.
Wow.
Small cap public.
Yeah.
And then we sold it to another semiconductor equipment company. And 96, I started Portola Communications with another colleague. And that was bought by about 1.5 years. It was bought by Netscape,
wow,
which was bought by AOL.
Yeah.
And, you know, there were small things because, you know, we were very early exits. Okay. But you never know what happens. Most of many companies go down and things like that. I'm still involved with some entrepreneurship. I started mentoring some entrepreneurs locally in IIT Kanpur. So entrepreneurship is a very good thing because it helps put ideas to action, helps create jobs when you build companies to build something, whether it's a network or whether it's a group, an organization, or an idea that grows. And in fact, it's a very good thing. So again, you followed the passion. For so many years and decades, I had a passion that I want to build companies and help entrepreneurship, both India and here. So I was kind of doing that. And that's why I got involved, I think, with you and many other people. Penn IIT was another thing. I said, if IITians met together and created a network, they could help each other and create ideas and inspire each other. The idea is to inspire each other. And that's what is important.
True.
And, you know, so I'd like to see my interest, none of those interests go away. That's what I want to tell you. Genius is in the end. You can say, hey, I'm still following the environment, still care about the environment, helping environment. I still do. After I came back, I got involved with Indians for Collective Action, because the only group that was helping rural development, caring about the social aspect, education, Asha for Education, we helped start there within Sandeep Pandey, Deepak Gupta. They came to me and said, they want to do education. But I said, great idea. Let's go for it. The idea is look at their ideas, challenge them, inspire them, let them grow it. Now Asha has become a very big group. And the good idea about is, yeah, they started, I think in 90, must have been 92. They came to me. And then in 98, we spun them out of Indians for Collective Action. Prabhu Goyal came and said, hey, we want to do this fund scholarship for people who are bright. Okay. So I said, Prabhu, and Mashru and myself, we used to Prabhu, let's do it. Okay. So we started foundation. We used to call Foundation of Excellence. Okay, that's acronym is FOE, FO. That's not a good acronym. Then he said, it's not of excellence, it's for excellence of the people. So he named it Foundation for Excellence. And then after a year and a half or so, we spun it out from Indians for Collective Action. And that's where I first came to know Prabhu. Not because of IIT Kanpur, but because he wanted to do something. He had just come from Boston, moved here, okay? And so that has remained actually central to me, to help social entrepreneurs, help people who have the visions to transfer to make a new India.
So Abhay, I can't thank you enough. I can talk to you for hours. I know you for almost 2 decades now. And one thing, if there is an award which I can give you, I will say you are the person I always look up to. And every single IITian I talk to, they just look up to. And today, Abhay, especially in today's conversation, I'll say I've learned 3 things. One is passion. If you are passionate about something, word changes. Word will fall on your feet because you are passionate about it. Second thing is your curiosity or your desire to learn. Always learning, always learning. And third is really give back, because when you give back, it's just a phenomenal impact. And a lot of us are in the pursuit of creating wealth, which is not a bad thing. But at the same time, if we continue to give back to society, we can change the world. Once again, Abhay, thank you very much for joining us today and supporting our community.
Yeah, I just want to tell one more thing about the Asha.
Please.
Because of Asha, they called me to give a keynote speech to launch their marathon program.
Wow.
In 2001. So I gave the keynote speech on the spur of the moment. I was at that time, I think, 57. 2001, I'm born in 44. So I told them, okay, guys, how many of you are over 40? 0 hands went up. Over 30, quite a few hands went up. Over 20, most of the hands went up. So I said, I'm going to be 57. And, I can tell you all about why it's important to raise money for education in India. I can tell you all those things. Every runner was supposed to raise $2,620, $100 for each mile. Okay. So I said, I can help you with the fundraising. You all sign up. And it's not difficult because I'm going to be 57. I'm going to run the marathon with you. And I came back, told my wife, I'm going to run a marathon. He said, by yourself? I said, what do you think? By myself. He said, I'm going to run with you. Wow. So she also trained for the marathon. She's run 6-8 marathon. And that's the best thing I did because it made me healthy. Okay. After that, I've run countless marathon. I helped organize an ultra marathon, 50 kilometers at IIT Kanpur for the Golden Jubilee.
Wow.
And I ran it. And I was 65.
Wow.
In 2010.
And I bet you can still do marathon.
And then I did an Ironman triathlon.
Nice.
Okay. So again, it developed a passion. Developed a passion for running. I was not a passion for running or biking. Biking I had. So Ironman triathlon. So, just follow everything. Don't be afraid. So that's why my mother named me Abhay, which means have no fear.
Yeah,
okay?
you're living proof of that.
So don't get fear in the way. What's the insecurity? Come on, you won't be pauper or go on the street. So don't be afraid. Follow the passion.
Take your chances.
Approach life with courage. Do new things. Get involved. Work with people. Enjoy.
Abhay,
Okay,
I
thank
can't
you.
thank you enough. This is so exciting, and I am going to be in Bay Area, so I love to hang out with you. I'll send you an email on that note. But
Sure.
I wanted to conclude our 1 hour. I'm Sanjiv Goyal, conference chair of IIT2020.org. You just heard Abhay. There are going to be a lot of phenomenal people like him at our event on December 4th and 5th. It's a virtual conference. Please do join us. Our event is open to all. Register at IIT2020.org. Our event is open to all. Thank you very, very much.